This video is sponsored by DigitalGrads. The time spent at university is a great time, but just because you've passed with flying colours is no guarantee that you'll actually get a job, especially in the tech world. Enter DigitalGrads, an online academy and employability organisation designed to help new graduates find work in fields such as marketing, communities, project management, accounting, media, graphic design, and several other fun and fulfilling careers. They provide online courses that you can take to help develop your work search skills, or just further your skills in your preferred career. Or if you're ready to get a job straight away, you can browse their job listings for your dream job, from all over the UK or even remotely working. They also provide services for employers, as if you want to hire someone for a job but don't wish to wait around for the ideal candidate to come to you, you can go to them by searching the listings of their members who are ready to start working straight away, as well as see their qualifications, experiences, skills, and their availability to work. Click the link down below to go to their website to see if they can help you with finding the right job or someone to do a job. DigitalGrads, find your dream job. And now, back to our regular scheduled programming. Alright my darlings, well today we're going to be talking about a subject that I've not yet talked about on my channel, anime. And to make a start with that, we're going to be talking about my favourite anime series. Can you guess what it is?
Ogenki Clinic?
How do you know about that series?
Who do you think it was who hacked your Discord a few weeks back? It was I, Huck.
You bastard. Stop trying to undermine me.
Make me.
Oh, I will. But for now, we're talking about the meme factory anime, Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Yes, the series that took R.E.O Speedwagon and turned it into a character. We're talking about one of the most over-the-top, ridiculous, but also very creative animes I've ever seen.
Even more than Ogenki?
Yes, and stop talking about that now or else there's a group of toffs with a pack of foxhounds that I'll introduce you to. But first, a little history. Jojo was created and written by Hirohiko Araki and first published in Weekly Shonen Jump in 1987. And apologies if I got his name wrong, I'm not very good with name pronunciations. It was quite the trendsetter at the time, since it was one of the few manga at the times that was set in the real world, but didn't take place in Japan, which was something very rare to see back then. The series was popular enough in the 80s and 90s, getting a few toys, video games, and even a few one-off OVAs, but it wasn't as big as other manga of the era, especially since it had very little crossover attempts besides the Capcom game Heritage for the Future, which didn't do all that great, and that's why it goes for ridiculous prices online these days. £100 for a game that I can play for free on retro games online? No thank you, sir. As a result, the series didn't gain a lot of Western attention until 2012, where a direct page-to-screen adaptation was made, which is what we're talking about today, starting off with Series 1, Phantom Blood. So, what's the plot? Well, despite the name, it's actually not that bizarre starting off, at least compared to other animes, but it is certainly unique, I can grant it that much. The story is about the son of a wealthy English nobleman, Jonathan Joestar, known as Jojo to his friends, and his adoptive brother, Dio Brando. Yeah, they don't waste time with the musician-inspired names here, as you can tell. This guy does stuff that puts Loki to shame. First thing he does when arriving at the Jojo house is kick Jojo's dog in the face and buries his elbow into Jojo's. Oh, and he does not stop there. He alienates all of his friends, makes his father think that Dio is a better son, assaults his girlfriend, which leads to the first of many memes that this series has generated, which we'll be keeping account of here.
You thought your first kiss would be Jojo, but it was I, Dio!
And believe me, there's a lot more to come. And as a coup de grace, he burns Jojo's dog alive.
We buried him while you were gone, son. It was nothing you should have to witness.
You know, Huck, I know we fight a lot, but I love you, and I'd hate to see that happen to you as well.
Oh wow, thanks. Do you forgive me for hacking you?
No. So Dio certainly makes it clear that he's not playing around and is willing to do everything he can to get what he wants, which in this case is power. He grew up in the slums with an abusive dad and wants to do everything he can to stop ending up like he did, and is going to usurp Jojo and take over the Joestar legacy to do so. Unfortunately, it seems that getting to second base with Jojo's girlfriend, Alina, was a step too far. And Jojo finally decides to show a little backbone and put Dio back in his place. He gains his courage and decks him pretty hard actually, which makes Dio realise that Jojo is tougher than he thought and decides to go for a more low profile scheme from then on.
Bloody his nose, and he comes back twice as fierce. Once I learn to master my temper, I'll be invincible to the likes of Jojo.
Oh, and by the way, this all happens in the very first episode. We're just getting started here. After they become young men, Dio has been trying to discover a more subtle way to kill Jojo and his dad, masquerading as the perfect brother to allay their suspicions. His plan is to use a strange mask that he found at the mansion, which has claws that pop up when blood is spilt onto it. Yeah, this is where the bizarre part of the title starts coming into play. He decides to test it out on some louts that accost him outside the pub, but much to his shock, the mask doesn't kill the guy, but instead turns him into a vampire.
Wait, so how does that even work? Every human has the ability to become a vampire if they go through a special acupuncture session?
I told you it was bizarre. Dio barely manages to survive the encounter thanks to the rising sun, so they're taking the whole sun kills vampires into account with this law, and decides that the mask is the thing that can give him the power he's been looking for all his life, and plans to become the ultimate being and rid himself of the Joestars in one fell swoop. Meanwhile, Jojo, quite understandably, suspects that Dio is up to something. I mean, what twigged you to it? The fact that he's a slimy, conniving arsehole and exudes pomposity at every pore of his body, and so searches the slums where he came from for clues, but is then confronted by a gang led by a man called, and I'm not kidding here, Robert R.E.O. Speedwagon.
Oh my god, seriously? What next? A guy called AC/DC?
Actually, yeah, but that's for later. Okay, we should address this now. Araki tends to take a lot of inspiration from Western media, like a lot of manga creators, and like other manga guys, he names his characters based on certain themes and tropes, but unlike others where they name them after objects or places, he names them after artists and songs. This is one of the things I love about this show, because it's hilarious to see how he tries to take names like that and turn them into characters. Speedwagon is one of the most silly, but you love his character just from that name alone, and we'll be seeing plenty more of this to come. He does start using other naming tropes like tarot cards in part 3 and food in part 5, but that's a subject for another day. Careful there, Hirohiko, that's Akira Toriyama's thing. Interestingly, the only major characters in the first part that don't have this trope are the Joestars. You may think that the name comes from the Beatles song Get Back.
Jojo left his home in Tucson, Arizona, awesome California grass.
But Araki was actually inspired by the name Steven Spielberg in having a name where the first and surname have the first same letter. But let's get ourselves back to the story. Jojo manages to beat Speedwagon and his odd job hat, and Speedwagon is so impressed that he decides to drop being a gang leader and become Jojo's right-hand man.
I like the cut of his jib. Sure he's naive, but he's a gentleman through and through, this one.
Huh. So, is that how you make lifelong friends? By beating the shit out of them? I guess Tyler Durden was right. They confront Dio at the mansion as Speedwagon reveals that Dio has been slowly poisoning their dad for months and found out by talking to, old man Vegeta here, who sold him the poison in the first place. Knowing the game's up, Dio swears off his allegiance from the Joestars and humanity, puts on the mask, and tries to stab Jojo to activate it, but his dad intercepts him and saves Jojo, but only for a few minutes, as Dio becomes a vampire.
Jojo, I should thank you for the source of my newfound power, your father's blood, and the ancient mask!
Kills all of the policemen that were in the house and sets the whole place on fire. But Jojo doesn't let this get him down and fights Dio in an epic battle and somehow manages to survive.
How could a worm like you it's over.
After recovering from that, he meets a man called Will A. Zeppeli. The first case of a name that is a bit more subtle with its reference. Guess dealing with the copyright from these guys would be far from a stairway to heaven.
Ooh.
He reveals that Dio is still alive and that Jojo can't kill him. That the only way to kill these vampires is to harness the power of the sun, which is their only weakness. And fortunately, he happens to be an expert in a martial art that harnesses that power through a person's body using their heartbeat and breathing, known as Hamon, or ripple depending on your dub.
The energy we call Hamon is created by the flow of one's blood. Hamon's ripples are the same form as the waves of light sent out by the sun itself.
This becomes a major catalyst for the plot of series 1 and 2, and it's actually quite fascinating since, unlike other forms of martial arts in anime, it's not about getting stronger, but more about versatility and strategy, which is another one of the things I love about Jojo. In Jojo, a strategy or technique is rarely used more than once, since the villains are all very clever and learn to adapt their strategies to avoid being beaten the same way twice. And this is one of the genius things about the series in how each kind of power utilized by the heroes and villains may not be the most outwardly powerful, but the creativity of the characters, and subsequently the creator, makes them be used in ways that makes the user very hard to defeat, and it only gets better as the series goes on. It's almost like an anime written in the style of Sherlock, where it rewards paying attention and uses intelligence and creativity to make the fights interesting rather than just brute force and strength to make yourself stronger. Which is why I like this over other shonen anime, since while many of them are very creative, they don't have the greatest amount of intelligence or nuance to them in how the characters utilize their abilities and grow as characters, just elevating themselves to the next level in terms of strength.
You are gonna get so much hate from DBZ and Naruto fanboys.
What are they gonna do? Yell at me until they pass out and then run away with their arms behind their backs? Maybe we should just get on with the review. The ripple has effects that are similar to static electricity and life energy, so it can do all sorts of amazing things, like being able to destroy a rock without hurting the frog that's sitting on it, allowing the user to walk on water, so apparently Jesus was a ripple user, turn various objects into weapons, and rip off the Namekians from Dragon Ball.
Well, when you're already ripping off Fist of the North Star, in for a penny, in for a pound, right?
And so, Zeppeli decides to train Jojo in the ripple and go and defeat Dio once and for all, which is what the majority of the rest of the series is about. This also starts another major trope for the series in how each series has a different narrative structure to it, and the first one is established here in the form of going to fight an evil structure, so essentially basically making it like the final act of Dracula, appropriately enough. Unfortunately, once they find Dio, they find that being a vampire in this world comes with its own boons. Dio now has complete control over every aspect of his body. He can regenerate from any wound, remove all the body heat he has to freeze things on contact, control his body parts even after they've been detached, bring the dead back to life, and even shoot blood out of his eyes with such pressure it can split the clouds. And he only understands his powers more the longer he spends with them. What on earth did you do to get so powerful, Dio?
Shouldn't that be how many loaves of bread you've eaten?
Don't ruin the meme. Jojo and Zeppeli then fight his army of the undead, which sadly results in Zeppeli getting on the stairway to heaven himself, but tells Jojo that he is powerful enough to beat Dio.
Jojo, through you, I will live on forever. My son.
They then finally arrive at Dio's castle, along with some other allies they met along the way, and after a few botched attempts to beat him, Jojo finally lands his Sunlight Yellow Overdrive.
Sunlight Yellow Overdrive!
His most powerful move on him. But even this wasn't enough to kill him, as Dio is a quick thinker. He cuts his head off before the ripple can get to it and saves himself.
Guess a little bit of ripple is enough to lose your head over.
Boo. Unfortunately, the ripple's effect makes him unable to grow his body back, so he comes up with a plan B. have old Vegeta put his head in a jar, Futurama style, ambush Jojo on his wedding night on the Titanic, or at least something similar to the Titanic, and put his head onto Jojo's body. Well, to be fair, with that sort of specimen, it's not a bad trade-up. Unfortunately for him, Jojo also isn't stupid, and while he doesn't make it to the end of the fight, he does manage to beat Dio one last time. Save his now pregnant wife and one baby that was still alive on the ship, and bring the ship, with him and Dio on it, down.
No. It's too late. He's dead.
Supposedly taking Dio down for good, ending Part 1. Part 1 isn't as remembered as fondly by fans as other parts, but personally I love it. The slower pace really works for me, despite being only 9 episodes long. It's a ton of fun, has great atmosphere, and like I said, has some really creative and intelligent writing, and really makes you want to know more about how this world works. The characters are also great too. Jojo is a little bit of a blank slate, but his nobility, honour and gentlemanness really makes him endearing and makes you want to root for him. Also, in the dub, he's voiced by former Power Ranger Johnny Young Bosch, who does an amazing job.
Passes through the glass, my arm, my body, the ground itself. I can feel his vibrations in the wine. With Hamon, all is made clear to me now.
Dio is also great. He's one of the most despicably, lovably hateable villains I've ever seen, and he knows it and loves every minute of it.
Remember, you promised not to hurt my child.
So be it then.
Sweet little child.
That's something you've taken care of on your own.
Speedwagon's also a lot of fun, and while he mostly exists as the comic relief sidekick, unlike other versions of this character in anime, when he helps out, he genuinely helps and does a good job, and his dedication to Jojo is actually very admirable.
His body can barely contain its strength. The Baron's Hamon joined and multiplied incredibly with Jonathan's. There's been nothing like this ever!
Although for some reason his dub actor, Keith Silverstein, seems to give him a quasi-Aussie accent.
I've been trying to steal my spine leading up to this little tete-a-tete, but it's like the Grim Reaper's breathing down me neck!
So he's a street gang leader, expat Australian?
And yet this is far from one of the most out-of-place things in this franchise, believe me. The theme song is also awesome. It has a bit of a Cowboy Bebop vibe, but has a very epic and triumphant feel that really gets you pumped for the series. But now, it's time to move on to the second part, Battle Tendency. This series takes place 50 years after the events of Phantom Blood and follows the exploits of Jonathan's grandson, Joseph Joestar, who is by far the best Joestar in the series. Yeah, I said it. Fight me on this. You will lose. Joseph is awesome.
And I'd sure like it if you'd tell me your name.
It's Joestar. Joseph Joestar. My friends call me Jojo.
Jonathan has that very kind of old-fashioned gentleman element about him, with a little bit of the typical blank slate anime protagonist you saw a lot back then. Joseph, on the other hand, is kooky, weird, a goofball, a bit rude, but still has a good sense of manners about him, a heart of gold, clearly doesn't take himself too seriously, and yet loves himself.
Hey you! Why don't you get a clue what you're doing, dumbass?
Hello there. What? Didn't hear that. I can't make it out. Would you mind repeating all that?
Why can't you ever just think things through, Jojo?
I do, in fact. A great deal.
So in other words, he's basically the Jojo equivalent of the 10th Doctor.
Sounds about right. I mean, he's got the same haircut as a young David Tennant.
It's also worth pointing out that his voice actor is Ben Diskin, who also provided the voice of Number 1 in K&D Kids Next Door, who was an absolutely perfect choice for the voice of Joseph. His very arrogant and somewhat pompous style of delivery goes perfectly well with Joseph's very egocentric, goofy kind of persona. Granted, the fact that I know it's Ben Diskin doing the voice is a tad distracting because he does almost sound exactly like Number 1 sometimes.
Give me happy. Now be silly. Show us those pearly whites.
You had me come all the way up here for a meatball sandwich?
But still, it was a really good choice. Which in that regard, he's also smart as hell.
If the brass knuckles are what you're looking for, you might want to check your back pocket instead. Since the blood is on your shirt and not that pink horror of a coat, it was taken off prior to the fight, and that's when you proceeded to stow them away in your back pocket.
He has Sherlock level abilities of being able to come up with plans and attacks on the fly, and some of his logic is absolutely insane, and the way he's able to come up with plans so quickly is just simply ridiculous, but it works almost every time.
That cactus was my goal all along, Herr Donovan. Cacti are made up of nearly 95% water, and they're known to be fabulous conductors of Hamon.
In other shows with other characters, this could come off as rather silly or just simply lazy writing, in how he comes up with ridiculous solutions that almost always end up seeming to work out. But with such an enjoyable main character, a lot of genuine suspense in some of the setups, and the fact that they are explained in great detail every time they happened, making you truly believe how this could happen, with some suspension of disbelief given the fact that it involves magical powers and vampires, of course. This is what made Jojo, but in particular Battle Tendency, my favourite anime. Admittedly, the constant exposition does become a bit tedious as the future series go on, but the good pace of Phantom Blood, and especially Battle Tendency, does help with making it feel very natural and doesn't bog it down too much. Speaking of which, the series is now twice the length of the previous one at 17 episodes. Though with a story that involves elements of espionage, MacGuffins, potentially world-ending threats, and Nazis, you kind of need that little extra bit of time to make all of this happen.
Wait, hang on, what did you say was in this?
Oh yeah, Nazis. We should probably address that. Since this series takes place in the 1940s and most of its locations are based within Europe, naturally they address the fact that there are Nazis about, and admittedly it does get kind of awkward with one of the members of the Nazi party and his battalion actually ending up becoming uneasy allies to Jojo and his gang. This does make things a bit uncomfortable, especially given Japan's contribution to the Second World War, but with Jojo's ridiculously over-the-top style, which it gets into excess in this particular series, possibly more so than any other future versions, you kind of just go with it and have fun with it, especially considering what happens to said major Nazi ally, but we'll get into that later on. I get the feeling that Araki was heavily inspired by Raiders of the Lost Ark for this particular series, since the search for a MacGuffin item in the form of the Leadstone of Aja, which again we'll get into later, coupled with the wartime setting and the Nazis also trying to search it down, it does give the series a very Indiana Jones vibe, which is the major theme of this series in comparison to the previous one.
Is this also going to be a story where if the main character did nothing, the story would still play out exactly how it would anyway?
Oh my, no. In fact, you could argue that the inclusion of the main character actually made the situation worse in this story. Before we get into the story though, I have to say the theme song is even more awesome here. It definitely has an even more Cowboy Bebop vibe to it, and it definitely embraces its old school J-pop feel to it, but who cares? It's so catchy and has so much energy to it, and much like the previous one, it really does pump you up and fill you with adrenaline for the upcoming series. Especially with the final shot of Jojo yelling as the song reaches its climax. It's genuinely one of my all-time favourite theme songs. And the visuals for the opening are incredible as well. The combination of colours and patterns, and each pose that the characters go through is an art form in and of itself. This is where the voguing, or the Jojo poses as they are known, have become far more prevalent, and is something that you either love or hate. Me personally, I love it.
It's probably a good thing that they never tried to make a live-action adaptation of this series. I mean, could you imagine how absolutely exhausting and painful it would be to try and emulate those poses?
Well, actually they did, but that's also a story for another time.
I'm just glad we don't have to do these poses for this video.
Oh yeah, that'd be really silly. The story starts off with a now older Speedwagon discovering a strange tree in the middle of South America, which has embedded in it hundreds more stone masks and a strange man in the middle of it. It's also established, by the way, that Speedwagon has become a rich oil tycoon and has his own organisation called the Speedwagon Foundation, which specializes in researching into the supernatural, the paranormal, but above all else, is mainly there to help out the Joestar family. How well did Jonathan beat up Speedwagon that he was dedicated to him even after he died? This is almost a single white female level of obsession right now. Unfortunately, Speedwagon doesn't get a chance to examine it particularly well, since it's revealed that one of his accomplices, who was also one of the Ripple Warriors who helped defeat Dio 50 years ago, called Straits, has secretly been following Speedwagon around in the hopes that he'll be able to find another stone mask, since he admired Dio secretly and wants to have permanent youth and beauty like he had. So he betrays Speedwagon, turns himself into a vampire, and goes to kill the only man he thinks can destroy him, Joseph Joestar. Speaking of which, Joseph has arrived in New York with his grandmother, Alina, and it's revealed that his mother and father supposedly died when he was a baby, and as such, Alina has been raising Jojo as her own all these years. And after enjoying cola for the first time, he gets into a little tussle with a corrupt cop who is hassling a young black kid known as Smokey Brown, and shows off that even at a young age and with very little training, he commands a mastery over the Ripple greater than even his granddad had.
Straight over to snap the cop's finger!
Well, now they're unintentionally referencing another classic Beatles song.
What do you mean?
He shoots Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah, from Come Together.
A song whose chorus could have probably been a line we used in our last video.
Come together over me.
Hey, watch it now. That video took a lot of work to get past the censors. I don't want to have to do the same for this one.
This series really shows off what the Ripple can do. We got a taste of this in the last series with Zeppeli using it to turn wine into his Hamon katas. But this Jojo has a lot of imagination in the ways he can use it. When Straits arrives to kill him, he shows off not only his brazenness with trying to take him down with a machine gun and a bouquet of grenades straight away.
I knew the man was crazy, but not that crazy! Right out in public? Incredible! Where did he even get the Tommy gun?
How can you not love this guy? But he also shows how creative you can be with the Ripple, such as using 2 shot glasses to deflect Straight's eye beams right back at him and kill him. This fight, and the one previously involving a loud gangster at the cafe, shows off one of this Jojo's more memorable traits, and the demonstration of just how smart he is.
Next thing you'll say is, how could he possibly be alive with that hole in his head?
How could he possibly be alive with that hole in his head?
They say it's rude to finish somebody else's sentences, but
it does take skill to actually predict what someone else is going to say before they even say it. Now you're going to say, "Hey, I wasn't finished yet."
Hey, I wasn't finished yet. Yeah, this is a really cool little character gimmick, plus it also helps show how he's completely in control of the situation, and that's one of this Jojo's key skills, that he normally has complete mastery of anything that is around him, though what is coming up later is probably something that even he couldn't predict completely. Just before Straits dies, he reveals that Speedwagon is still alive, but was captured by Nazis on maneuvers in South America. As such, Jojo departs straight away in order to rescue his dear Uncle Speedwagon. This is another thing I love about this Jojo. He couldn't care less about right and wrong or doing the right thing just to do it. He does most of the things he does just because other people piss him off, and messes with people that he cares about. But I'll give him credit that at least he does seem to have some sense of morality and manners about himself, which is more than I can say about his grandson in the next part, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Unfortunately, it seems that the Nazis are also aware of the big tree and the stone masks, and after the leader of this Nazi battalion, Stroheim, experiments on it, it reveals that it was housing the body, the still alive body mind you, of an ancient man who belongs to a race who are responsible for creating the stone masks in the first place, and are several times more powerful than the vampires, known as the Pillar Men.
He's pulling him straight into his body! He's devouring him!
This one gets named Satana, and he really shows off what his species can do. Being able to collapse himself to pass through air ducts, inhabiting the body of a fellow soldier, absorbing all the bullets that get shot at him, and then firing them back through the soldier's finger. and the more experienced members of this species that we'll meet later on show that they can turn themselves into living weapons. They have so much control over their bodies, like boiling their blood to be hotter than lava, shooting pressurized jets of wind out of their bodies.
You can do that too.
Not quite as powerful as that though.
And yours is more smelly.
Alright, now leave it. And making blades from their bones. I think they may have actually found the Ubermensch. Fortunately, Jojo arrives soon after, but first has to get through in a disguise that, well, let's just say is about as subtle as everything else in this series.
All I've got under my skirt is more tequila, big boy. Is it alright to bring that through too?
Now there's something I didn't expect to see today.
And then goes off to fight Santana with Stroheim's help, but while Stroheim isn't quite able to keep himself together through the fight, Jojo is just about able to beat him, thanks to some good timing and some dumb luck. Though unlike the vampires, when the Pillarmen get caught in sunlight, they just turn to stone. So they're Disney's gargoyles now? After the Speedwagon Foundation then rescue him and Speedwagon, they decide that they need to find if there are any other Pillarmen out there and destroy them as well. Fortunately, or unfortunately depending on how you look at it, the Nazis have discovered 3 more Pillarmen underneath the Colosseum in Rome, which works out for Jojo because it also allows him to meet up with his new partner, Zeppeli's grandson, Caesar, who really shows off the versatility of the Ripple with his signature weapon, Bubbles.
Fucking bubbles!
Laugh if you will, but he actually really does some impressive things with these bubbles. He can make cutters out of them like his old man, trap people in bubbles and suffocate them, and even use them as lenses to reflect sunlight.
Who knew bubbles could be so deadly? Outside of getting them stuck in your bloodstream, that is. I'm actually surprised he didn't try that one. Unlike his grandfather though, Caesar hates Jojo because he blames his grandfather for killing Zeppeli all those years ago, and this tension between them is the major character driving force of the series, since as well as the fact that they don't like each other, they have to work together in order to beat this threat, thus forming a very tense bromance.
I won't be forced to work with this imbecile! Hamon as weak as yours couldn't pluck the petals off this delicate flower.
Sorta like us.
In a way, I suppose. Of course, the Pillarmen then awaken.
Awaken, my masters!
And after a bit of a botched scuffle between them, Jojo and Caesar, the Pillarmen make their intentions clear, that being that they, Wham, AC/DC and Cars...
Seriously?
Yeah, the naming convention loses all sense of subtlety at this point. Wish to find a particular powerful artifact that will allow them to rule the world, but are impressed with Jojo's fighting skills, but know that he wouldn't be able to even come close to beating them without several months of training. So give him an incentive to not run away by fusing 2 rings into his bloodstream, which will dissolve after an allotted time and release the poison, killing him instantly, and can only be gotten rid of if he beats them in battle and takes their own rings.
And I keep the antidote for that poison in my nose ring.
I've got one around my throat and one around my heart. Do these guys think I'm some kind of bigamist or maybe...
I mean, we've all been there, haven't we? Jojo realizes he's in deep shit as a result, and so he and Caesar venture to an island where they meet Caesar's trainer, a woman known as Lisa, who reveals that she is also the protector of the artifact that the Pillarmen are looking for, the Red Stone of Aja, as it's revealed that if a Pillarman wears a stone mask with the red stone in it, and then stands in the light of the sun, it will allow them to become the ultimate life form. Still makes more sense than gathering the DNA of a bunch of the world's greatest fighters and then turning it into some weird bug man. Caesar and Jojo then spend the next several weeks training, and Jojo manages to beat AC/DC after he gets impatient and comes to meet Jojo on the island himself. And while the battle certainly takes a while, they finally manage to beat AC/DC and destroy his brain once and for all, but not before this rather infamous moment.
Would it really be all that wrong if I took a peek through the keyhole to check things out? Oh, nice!
Why is that infamous? It doesn't seem that out of character from something Jojo would do.
Oh, just you wait. The 3 of them then venture off to Switzerland in order to confront the Pillarmen, as well as retrieve the Red Stone, as Lisa's servant Susie Q under the possession of AC/DC of course, sent the red stone there in order to be retrieved by the remaining Pillarmen. But when they arrive, they find that somebody else has already acquired it. And who might that be, I wonder?
You're von Stroheim!
How the hell is he still alive?
Well, as he says... Yep, Stroheim has been resurrected as a cyborg, and he and his battalion were able to intercept the package and acquire the red stone. And while all seems like good news, this time Caesar is the one to get impatient and goes to confront Wham at the Pillarmen's headquarters in order to end him once and for all. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well for him and he ends up dying. Jojo takes it quite well considering. However, before he died, he was able to transfer his ripple energy into a big blood bubble, which also contains his headband and the ring that Jojo needs to take in order to get rid of the ring inside of his body. But out of respect for his friend, he decides not to use it until he's beaten Wham to avenge his death, which he gets to do Ben-Hur style with a chariot race at the Colosseum. Hang on, since when did Switzerland have a big stone Colosseum in it? And where did all the snow go? It takes everything he has, but Jojo finally manages to beat Wham once and for all. But in his final moments, Jojo admits that he did have respect for him and AC/DC, since both were proud and noble warriors.
The honor you showed my friend, Caesar's warrior spirit, had earned your respect. So in return, I wanted to find a way to honor your warrior spirit. My blood is a tribute to you.
Now there's a class act for you. Unfortunately, the same can't be said about their leader, Kars, who then fights Lisa and double-crosses her in order to get the red stone. Speedwagon and Stroheim also arrive to help out. This is where Speedwagon then reveals that Lisa is in fact Jojo's long-lost mother, who went into hiding after she killed a man who had killed her husband. And said man just happened to be the one remaining zombie left after the destruction of all the other ones years ago. He could probably be an award winner for the longest living zombie in fictional history, actually. 50 years before he managed to bite the dust the second time. That's actually pretty impressive. As such, Jojo never even got a chance to meet her before he became self-aware of who she even was. And now you know why that scene is so infamous.
Oh, now I get it.
I'm just glad the series didn't go the full Nizo Monogatari and have some weird incest relation happen from this, or some weird toothbrush sex scene. Jojo then takes on Kars and seems to be able to defeat him, but in the scuffle he was able to acquire the red stone, and with the unfortunate assistance of Stroheim and the Speedwagon Foundation created sun lamps, is able to achieve perfection and become the ultimate life form.
It has the abilities of all other life forms at its disposal and outperforms them.
Well, how's old Jojo gonna get out of this one?
Well, put simply, he doesn't. He gives Kars the runaround until he gets him to a volcano, which Kars uses his incredible power to punch Jojo's arm off and make the volcano erupt. The pair of them then rocket towards the sky, and just as Kars is about to escape, this happens.
Enjoy the fruits of your folly, Jojo!
Who's laughing now, huh?
No way.
Yes way. Jojo's hand gets propelled by the forces of the volcano and embeds itself into Kars's throat. The rubble then propels him higher and launches him out of the atmosphere and into space, where he freezes to death and floats off into the wild black yonder. So yeah, technically Jojo didn't really beat the bad guy in the end, which is a unique way to end the series. Admittedly, they think that Jojo dies from this because, well, he did land in the middle of the ocean, but he turns up at his own funeral of all things, and they all live happily ever after. Until 50 years later when something else turns up. So, that was series 1 and 2 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
It didn't start out so bizarre, but it sure did become bizarre by the end.
Very true. But for now...
We're wrapping up already?
This video is long enough as it is, and I don't have time to get into 4 more series, so if this video is popular enough, we'll get into those another time. But for now, I've had enough of this. I'm going on the other side to... Wait, What's happening to me?
Caesar!
Oh no! We've been Jojo'd. Being exposed for it to too long makes you start posing uncontrollably.
I'm in so much pain!
Me too. Let's end the video. I've had enough of this. I'm going on the other side to have a bath. Bye!
I'm gonna kill you!